gangster to love me better than all the others do.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is all about the KYSHADOW bronze palette. So I actually managed to score this in the very first launch, but because I'm in Australia it took about 2 weeks to arrive, but I have it in my hands now and I'm super excited to do some swatches, compare it to the Shaaanxo BH Cosmetics palette, and also just share my overall thoughts and opinions on this product. So if you're interested, just simply keep on watching and don't forget to thumbs up this video if you enjoy it, and leave me some comments below because you guys know I love having a good old chat. So let's get right on into it. Okay, so first of all, it comes obviously in the standard Kylie Cosmetics boxes. I literally do not throw out this packaging at all. Like, I keep all her boxes because they are just so beautiful. I love them so much. And you get the cool card where she's winking, and that is Kylie's actual eyes, I believe. And on the card it says, "I couldn't wait to share my new eyeshadows with you. I hope you adore them as much as I do. I love you." And see how it says like I instead of the letter I, it says the word I. But that's super cool. I'm definitely going to be keeping this too and pop it on my shelf, or I might even put it actually in a frame, in a black frame, because I just think it's just so cool, and I just never throw out stuff like this. Like, it's just too cool to go in the bin. So the palette comes in this little box here, which has like a little bronze sort of edge around the cardboard packaging with her eyes on it again, and it just says Kylie KYSHADOW Pressed Powder Eyeshadow. But yeah, that's the box that it actually comes in. Now I'm going to pop this down and show you the actual palette. So this is the actual palette here. It is just a standard cardboard palette packaging, and it has Kylie here on the inside of the lid. Now my biggest critique with this packaging is that it needs a mirror. Like, you can't have an eyeshadow palette without a mirror. It is so inconvenient, and today when I was actually doing my makeup for the tutorial, I just realized how inconvenient it is, especially when you do tutorials, because I usually hold the eyeshadow palette that I'm using and like obviously dip into the shadows and do my eye makeup, but I couldn't do that with this palette because it doesn't have a mirror. Now I actually saw a lot of people commenting online that they felt like the price point of the actual palette did not match the actual packaging standards because it's a cardboard palette. For me personally, I don't draw that assumption from having cardboard packaging. I'm sure it is a slightly inexpensive way of packaging products, but I have a lot of other high-end brands that are also in cardboard packaging that are more expensive than this. So some really good examples would be Kat Von D eyeshadow palettes, Manny MUA and Makeup Geeks collaboration eyeshadows. Benefit Cosmetics have a lot of cardboard packaging. Too Faced does. I also have a Tarte blush palette that's cardboard packaging. Anastasia highlight kits are cardboard packaging. I don't personally pretend to know what the manufacturing costs are, but I'm sure regardless of it being cardboard, metal or plastic, I don't think it would really be that much more inexpensive to have cardboard packaging. However, I do feel like the fact that it's missing a mirror is a sign that it would be less expensive, if that makes sense, because I feel like a mirror would obviously be an additional cost. So Kylie did actually say on Snapchat that she is already working on 2 or 3 other eyeshadow palettes, so I hope in the next launch she actually does invest in a mirror in the packaging, because it really is very inconvenient, especially if you're traveling, because I rely on my eyeshadow palette mirrors when I'm traveling. I don't want to have to take a mirror as well. But anywho, that's my main critique about the packaging. Other than that, it's very beautiful, it's very sleek, it's very minimalistic. On the back is where it has all the eyeshadow shades, and it's in like a metallic label, which you probably can't see because it's picking up the reflection of everything on my desk, but all the shades of the actual shadows are on the back. I do prefer when they are on the actual front of the palette. That's just personal preference. Again, probably like a beauty vlogger sort of preference. Obviously, if you're not doing beauty videos, then it doesn't really matter if the eyeshadow names are even on the palette at all, but that's just my personal preference. When it comes to the actual eyeshadow colors in this palette, they are very neutral and very basic colors. There is literally nothing special about any single one of these eyeshadows in this palette. So I just want to get that out there. It is a very basic, neutrals, everyday palette. So I definitely feel like this palette is geared to a very specific demographic. So essentially you need to be a Kylie Jenner fan, and secondly you need to love neutrals. If you're not a Kylie Jenner fan, and if you don't like neutrals, you're not going to like this palette, and you definitely won't see the value in it. Now when it comes to the actual quality of the shadows, I find like the matte shadows are very similar to Makeup Geeks formulation. They are just a little bit more powdery, but not in a bad way. When I swatch them, you'll see I get a little bit of kickback, but when I was actually doing my eyeshadow on my face, I didn't find that I had any fallout. So it was just really with the finger swatches. So I don't really think that's a big deal at all. Now there are actually 2 shimmers in this palette and 7 matte shades. The shimmers are not pigmented at all. In order to build up any sort of really nice color with them, you do need to do several applications, but I feel like that was intentional. If you look at Kylie's makeup, she does very simple makeup and I like never see shimmer on her lid. So she definitely wasn't trying to go for like a foiled eyeshadow effect by any means. So I feel like even though they're not incredibly pigmented, that was totally intentional. Now I do like this style for an everyday eye look though. All the actual matte shades blend out exactly the same. I feel like the formulation is very consistent between all 7 of the matte shades. The only color I'm not really too sure about is the black. It's not like a true black. It seems to be more of a bluey-based black shade. For me personally, I just like a straight, deep, matte black shade. Like I don't want any blue undertones or any of that. I just want like a really straight black, but like it definitely has some sort of strange undertone to it. And then this orange shade, I feel like it is too orange for me personally. I doubt I will ever reach for this shade, but that is more so personally because I'm not a super warm tone girl. If you love really warm tone shades, you're gonna love this throughout your crease. For me personally, just a little bit too orange and I would prefer it to be a little bit more neutral. Now, I wanna actually compare this to the Shannexo BH Cosmetics palette because a lot of people are saying that palette is a dupe and I totally disagree. I couldn't disagree more with people that are saying it's a dupe. When you look at them side by side, I feel like the packaging is half of what throws you off because it is very similar packaging. Now, Shannon's top 3 shades are very pinky based. Her middle 3 shades are warm tone browns and her bottom 3 shades are super cool tone. Whilst Kylie's entire palette is majority warm tone, and I feel like this brown up here in Kylie's palette is the only slightly cool tone as well as the black. Now, when it comes to Shannon's palette, her metallics or her shimmers, whatever you want to call them, are hands down 1000 times better. They're super pigmented, they have great color payoff, and they swatch 10 times better as well. But when it comes to the mattes, I definitely prefer Kylie's mattes in her palette. So when it comes to pan size, the KYSHADOWs actually have 0.05 ounces per pan, which is just slightly smaller than Makeup Geek's pan size. Compared to the Shannexo and BH palette, they look tiny, but that's just because in the BH palette, they actually are quite large pans, which is really great value for money if you are going to buy BH. You know, you're going to get a lot of product. So the price point for this palette is actually $42, which I don't think is unreasonable at all. So like I said before, I feel like it is definitely geared at a very specific target market. So if you're a Kylie Jenner or Kylie Cosmetics fan and you love neutral shades, then it'll be $42 well spent. I mean, I obviously have other shadow palettes in my collection that probably have exactly the same shades, but it's not the Shannexo palette. So I was watching, I think her name is Alyssa Ashley, and she actually compared this palette to the Morphe 350. Now, if you have that palette is definitely a dupe for this palette. The only thing the Morphe 350 palette apparently doesn't have is a black. So I'm going to link Alyssa Ashley's video below. It is a really great video. She does bomb as fuck makeup too. Like her tutorial using this palette was like out of this world. So if you're looking for something a little bit more glam with this actual palette, definitely check out her tutorial because it is insane. So like I said, it'll be linked in the description box for you guys. What actually makes this palette unnecessarily overpriced is the international shipping cost. So it cost me $15 US to ship this to Australia. So overall, I ended up spending, I think, about 76 Australian dollars for this palette. So if I didn't have to pay that damn international shipping, it would have been much more affordable. I'm still really happy with my purchase and I would still pay $15 shipping to get it here. Like, it's not going to stop me from buying it because in reality, that actually is fairly inexpensive for international shipping. People like ColourPop like usually charge anywhere between $20 to $30 for international shipping. So $15 isn't all that bad, but still it does end up making this palette very expensive. So overall, I think I'd have to score this palette about a 7 out of 10. If it had a mirror, I would bump it up to an 8. The reason why it's not a 10 out of 10 for me personally is even though I feel like the fact that the shimmery shades aren't incredibly pigmented for an intentional reason, that's what Kylie would personally like for herself, I feel like for the overall average person, they want a little bit more pigmentation in a shimmery shadow. I still like the 2 colors. I think they're beautiful and I'm definitely going to use them. However, like I said, I just think the average person would appreciate a little bit more pigment in those 2 shimmer shades. Okay guys, time for the mini eye tutorial. So I'm taking my Morphe E27 brush and the shade Topaz, and I'm just running that all through my crease. Now usually I would prefer a much lighter transition shade than this, but really the only shade that you could use in the palette for a transition is kind of that orange shade, and you already know I'm not really feeling that color very much. So then I'm going to switch up and use the E22, still using Topaz just to deepen up my crease and also pop some of it on my very outer V. I'm then going to go in with the shade Bronzite, which is much deeper yet again. I'm going to start by packing it on the outer V and then blending it up into about halfway through to my crease, just to create a lot of depth and dimension to the eye. Then taking my Sigma eye shading E55 brush, I'm going to pick up the shade Quartz and pack that all over my lid. I go in about 3 times just to build up a little bit more color because it is a little bit on the less pigmented side. Then using my Morphe E22 brush again, I'm just taking the shade Bronzite and deepening up that outer V. Then just putting a little bit more shimmer on top of the lid. Then using a pencil brush, this is a Morphe E24 brush. I'm taking Topaz first, then going in with Bronzite over the top just to smoke out my lower lash line. Then I used a little bit of Jasper on my eyebrow bone. Then off camera, I just went ahead and did some liner across my lash line and smoked it out with a pencil brush and popped on a pair of my favorite lashes, which are the Ardell Demi Wispies. So I hope you liked it. Just very simple, soft brown smoky eye. So guys, that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you give me a big thumbs up and leave me some comments. And of course, subscribe before you go. And I'll be talking to you really soon. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.
I held you to the ground 'cause you were floating. Told me you're afraid of disappointing. Pushing on your physical existence.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So this week's video is a continuation of last week's haul. So if you watched that, you would know my Canon 70D actually died.